Good afternoon, everyone, or almost afternoon for those of us on the East Coast. I am delighted to introduce Sari Beth Rosenberg, an award-winning U.S. history teacher and writer. She is also a columnist, a curriculum specialist in New York City, and she's currently writing a weekly series, Teaching in the Age of Coronavirus, for the PBS NewsHour Extra. Find her on Twitter and Instagram at Sari Beth Rose, her teacher Instagram at Sari Teaches History, and at saribeth.com. Without further ado, Sari, take it away.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I think it's letting me. Great. I'm just going to put it in full view. All right, y'all can see that it's loading. Everyone can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, everyone's on mute. I'm used to this because I've been teaching like this for a little while now. So first of all, I just wanted to thank everyone for tuning in, and I wanted to thank Second Avenue Learning for the honor of being able to present to you all today. And I was in the chat pretty active before. I'm learning so much about all these new programs and apps I can use with my students, and I can't wait to take them back into the classroom, maybe even over the next couple of months. And I also wanted to just give a really special shout out to all the teachers who are watching and who aren't watching. I know as a teacher myself that the past 2 months have been so challenging. And for me, it's just been so exciting for just the world to see what we do. And I mean, that's what we do. We're adaptive, and we just get with the program when we have to because we care about our students. And so I just wanted to say on behalf, just thank you to all the teachers. You're doing an amazing job, and it's been a tough time, but we're doing a great job. So speaking of which, my topic today is remote but not disconnected. How social studies teachers can keep our students engaged even during a global pandemic. A little bit about myself first. So I have been a social studies teacher at the High School for Environmental Studies in New York City for nearly 18 years. I've only worked at the same high school. I'm also a teacher curriculum specialist for the New York City Department of Education. I've been working on a team of amazing teachers and educators and curriculum specialists working specifically on 10th and 11th grade high school curriculum that's going to be used, that's already being used. And it's basically been adapted to align with the new Regents exam that was supposed to get, the US Regents exam was actually supposed to get rolled out in June, but pandemic. And you already mentioned that my recent column, the column that I'm writing weekly right now, is called Teaching in the Age of Coronavirus. So if you want to check that out, I can share that with you at the end. So for the first 17 and a half or so years of teaching, this is how it looked. The image to the far left is before tech, just me sitting at a desk talking to the students. And then the other two are from this year. And then very quickly, and I'm sure you all can relate to this and it looks familiar, this has been teaching. It's a lot of, I'm sure the teachers watching and the professors and everyone just in general have noted that we've all been staring at our faces a lot more than we wanted to probably, but this is what the new world of teaching has become. And I said here, look familiar, and I'm sure you're all nodding or possibly saying something in the chat. So, but the deal is this, right? Online or offline, wherever we're teaching, my core goals, and I'm sure everyone watching too, your core goals have not shifted. My core goals I've outlined are threefold. Imbue students, and this has been from the beginning of teaching, even before having the amazing technology that we have at our fingertips right now. It's always been imbue students with an understanding of the past, empower students to better navigate the present, and encourage them to reimagine the future through civic engagement. And those have been my goals, as I said, really from the beginning. And this has been my guiding question from the start, and it still is even during remote learning. And maybe in the chat you can share if you have a similar guiding question. I asked myself from the beginning, after your students graduate, what do you want to remember about your class, right? And so sometimes, and I'm sure some of you can relate, I wonder if they just they'll think of this. This is, if you're familiar with the film, it's Tina Fey's teacher, the character is the teacher that Tina Fey brilliantly plays in Mean Girls. And I definitely felt like this was a little worried that this is me, possibly. This is a gif from the film. And then it's possible that my teachers, my students, and other teachers might agree. They might see you like this. This is a classic film, Dazed and Confused, and this is one of the opening scenes. This is the teacher from Dazed and Confused. So, I mean, I could go on and on with gifs of teachers that I'm maybe concerned students see me as, but this is what I'm really looking for. Maybe a little bit of this, but I want them to think this. And this is actually a paraphrased quote from a student that I saw at an alumni reunion last year. A student came up to me, and I hadn't seen her in 6 years because I've been teaching for 18 years, which still blows my mind. She said to me, every time I read or watch the news, I think about our US history class. It relates to everything. And I might have almost cried, maybe I did, because this is exactly what I'm aiming for. Sure, I want my students to do as best as they can on all the tests, right? The Regents exams, the AP exam, which my students have on Friday. I'm taking a break to present to you before going back to prep with them. That's important, right? It's benchmarks, it's goals. It allows us to check in and see how our students are doing and what they're learning. But at the end of the day, I'd rather have a student come up to me on the street 10 years from now and say, I read the news and I think of our class, versus I'm so glad I got a 5 on the AP exam. I mean, both would be fine, but if I had to choose one, it would be this. Because this is something that I fundamentally believe to my core. The key to civic engagement is empowering students with a strong, comfortable understanding of history and the ability to connect it to the current political, economic, social, cultural landscape in America today. And that's what I aim for. And that's why I was so excited and I get so excited when students tell me that years from after my class. And in the chat, I'll look later. I want to see if you feel the same way. So right now, during remote learning, I believe that civics, and I'm preaching to the choir, of course, at this conference, I believe that civics education is more crucial than ever during remote learning. And I have a couple anecdotes to show how it's working. So for me, the reason why I believe this is that I think that it allows you to really engage and empower your students when everyone's feeling anxious, alienated, disconnected, far removed from one another. And I found that although not the type of discussion I enjoy in real life, it has generated the times when I bring up topics related to civics and current events. I believe I see it generating a timely, lively, and educational discussion. And I have a limitless amount of examples, but I'm going to share 3 with you so I don't take up too much time. Okay, so during remote learning, one piece of advice I have for teachers watching, whether you're a kindergarten teacher, it's K through 12, right? This is a great time to just cold call, reach out to experts, historians, people in the field that normally might not be available to come into your actual class. And I've had some success with this. I reached out to 2 people in particular and said, hey, would you mind doing an Instagram live with my students? Or, hey, do you want to join my Zoom chat? And I had success. So that's one piece of advice I give to you today. Just, you have nothing to lose, right? And I do find that people are looking to help right now, whether they're activists or historians or other people in our field. And I found that students were most engaged when talking about current events, civics, and their own individual agency. So that propelled me to reach out to these 2 individuals. And I'm hoping maybe I can shout out now, maybe other people watching want to come to my class. So example 1 this happened a couple weeks ago. I was wrapping up my unit because I had to start test prep for the AP exam, but I found it fundamentally important to not just stop my civil rights unit in the middle, even though that won't be on the AP exam. And we were up to discussing the Black Power movement. And Dr. Uhura Williams, who does a lot of amazing work across the country and the New York City Department of Education, I reached out to him and I said, hey, I know that this is your expertise. Would you mind jumping into an Instagram Live with me and my students and possibly joining a Zoom class to talk about the Black Power movement, the Black Panthers, and the civil rights movement in general? And he said yes. And it was so great because he was able to model how historians work. That's what we've been working on in my class. And what I really loved about it related to civics is that it really generated this really amazing discussion on Zoom. I think it was still Zoom before we moved to Google Meet. And we started talking about young people today in politics and activism, and the students were buzzing with things to say. And I was kind of blown away because we're all still experimenting with online learning. And there are times during AP review they're not as talkative, but they started bringing all these parallels to Bernie Sanders' campaign, to the March for Our Lives movement. And it made me excited because they're feeling a little down right now, to say the least. And I saw their eyes light up and their words light up in the chat because it reminded them that they do have power, even though we're quarantined right now. The other example was this is also, I also find that meet the students where they are. If students are interested in something, now is a great time with remote learning to experiment a little bit. For me, I don't have the Regents exam to prepare for. We just have the AP exam on Friday. So you can be a little more flexible right now if you are working in a state that often has state testing. And you can still do it with state testing. It still aligns. Students early on, when we started doing remote learning, a bunch of them started emailing me articles they were seeing about a possible impending crisis in the prison systems in America, in particular Rikers, because we're here in New York City. And it actually ended up happening. There was a fear that there was going to be a major COVID-19 spread because of the close vicinity in which the prisoners were living in prison. And I happen to know Eliza Orland. She's an incredible public defender here in New York City. And I had seen that she'd been tweeting about this. So, like I said, I just wrote to her and said, hey, want to join my class tomorrow? We did it on Instagram Live, just to have fun with it, but I recorded it. And if you want to see the full interview, it's on YouTube, and I can share that with you in the chat later. And it was just an exciting moment for me because many of my students were able to ask. She talked about her job as a public defender. She talked about the crisis and framed it within the civil rights movement so we could practice synthesis. And a lot of students were asking for just career advice on how to pursue careers in criminal justice. I learned a lot, and they certainly learned a lot. And again, it empowered them. By making them realize they can get civically engaged. They can call their Congress people to tell them that they're concerned about Rikers. They can tweet about it. They can get their voices out there, even though they can't take to the streets or something. And it doesn't even have to be a criminal justice issue. It could be any issue, right? This is a nonpartisan thing, right? Like activism could be in any realm, and it could take any shape or form. So that's what I modeled to them by bringing her in. And again, this is all with remote learning. And just another quick example, because I don't want to take up too much time, is if you a lot of you might have clubs. I've had a club that I co-advise with a teacher, Alexander Marks, called the Feminist Eagles. We found it with students in 2015, and it's really a social justice club. And a lot of the students who are in this club also have gotten involved in other social justice groups around the city, inspired by topics we discuss in there. The students lead the discussions. I just listen and learn. And we've taken this club to Google Meet. And it really has always been a safe space for students to share what they're going through, talk about current events, and it's been effective now. It's still like a really strong, big touchstone for them, a place for them to connect, and we took it to Google Meet. So that's another way that you can stay connected, even through remote learning, using civics, activism, empowerment of students as kind of the glue. And some other helpful resources that I've used, aside from, obviously, you have the whole list of everyone presenting today. two other resources that I have found really useful and helpful. Well, Civics for All, which is the curriculum that the New York City Department of Education, I think, did a masterful job creating. It's for K through 12. It could be, and Jenna Brial, shout out to her, she's the implementation lead, and Nora Levitt's the executive director, I believe that's her title. What makes it work, and this is the theme, if you've noticed, it's written by New York City DOE teachers for New York City DOE teachers. But what makes these lessons work is that the teachers take the lessons and they relate them to what the students are experiencing and want to learn, and they connect it to students and their respective communities. And one other resource that I'm using and really enjoying that also provides really great civics and history lessons that you can use at home is vis-a-vis the New York Historical Society. You can follow At Home History, or there's a link in my slides that I can share with you. It's free. You can use it with your students. There's workshops that I'm going to participate in once I'm done grading all my AP exam practice essays. And yeah, so I actually just want to finish with a discussion with people if we have time. I tried to get some extra, I know I had about 15, 20 minutes. We have about 5 minutes. I'm curious to hear, how are you engaging your students during remote learning? Are you using civics as a hook? How are you making history come alive for them, even though you're not in the classroom with them? And I mean, I've already gotten some ideas from some of the presenters today, but I'm really curious to hear in the chat what you all are doing. And you can, if you want to put something in the chat now, or we can keep the conversation going on Twitter, you can email me, and that's my website if you wanted to check it out. So yeah, so how are you engaging your students during quarantine? I'm trying to see the chat. I don't know where that is in here. Maybe I have to stop sharing my screen. But on that note, I want to thank you so much for your time and for inviting me to present here today and talk to you. And again, thank you to all the teachers out there. Thank you to everyone providing these amazing resources to help us do our job and to really just achieve our goals as teachers, engaging our students and making history come alive for them every day. So thank you.
Thank you. That was absolutely wonderful. And I loved the goals that you have for your class. And I couldn't be in more agreement that civics is more urgent than ever right now. And I think we have an incredible opportunity as educators to leverage this teachable moment and opportunities for helping them become increasingly engaged as participants.
Absolutely. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for inviting me to speak today and join the conference. It's been really fun.
Absolutely, our pleasure.